All right, guys, today was a lower body training session here at Kingwood Strength and Conditioning. And this was a twos week for me, which means my first exercise of the day. The goal is to get 3 heavy doubles. Weights are a little bit low right now. I'm dieting, and so everything is quite a bit lower than it was just a few weeks ago or even a few months ago. So it's body weight's down to about 204. It's been coming down pretty steadily over the last few weeks, which is making the heavy squats especially pretty difficult. So did the best that I could today. Wound up with 3 doubles at 455. That felt pretty stout. And then usually my lower body days on the weeks where I'm doing doubles on the squatting movement, then I will follow that up with a deadlifting variation, usually in like the 3 to 5 rep range, so just a little bit heavier than the twos. On my lower body days where I'm beginning the workout with deadlifts, then I will follow that up with a squatting variation, okay? And the reps just change according to the week. So right now I'm basically doing my 8-5-2 programming, my 8-5-2 program, which a lot of you guys are familiar with. So this was my twos week. So I generally keep the supplemental lift heavy as well. So anyways, back squat, 3 sets of 2. And then today we did a stiff-legged deadlift from a 2-inch deficit. So stiff legs, and those were done for 3 sets of 3 with 405. Those were a little bit light. If I wanted to, I probably could have pushed out another rep or 2 or used a little bit more weight for triples, but energy just wasn't real high today, just based on the calories and carbs being really low. So I kind of just, today was one of those days where I just got the work done and didn't worry too much about setting any type of PR. But you'll notice on the stiff legs, one of the things that I've talked about with some of my online clients in my barbell club is that the stiff leg mechanics are obviously different than a regular deadlift, in that your hips are higher, your knees are obviously in less flexion than they would be in a regular deadlift. That's pretty obvious. But notice also the knees are not totally straight. A lot of people call these straight-legged deadlifts, and they're not straight-legged deadlifts. They're just stiff-legged. So there's a little bit of knee bend. The amount of knee flexion is basically going to be determined by your mobility. So the main thing is that you have to be able to set your low back into extension. And if your knees are really, really straight on these, it makes it harder. If you don't have good mobility, it makes it harder to set your back into extension. So you bend your knees just enough to allow you to set your back into really hard extension so you don't hurt yourself. And that's kind of how you determine the right amount of knee bend in here. So some guys, if they're not real mobile and they try to keep their knees relatively straight with maybe just a little bit of flexion in there, they can't set their back and they wind up getting hurt. So you'll also notice bar position on the stiff leg deadlift, generally out in front of the midfoot just a little bit. And actually I kind of picked that up from a Ed Cohn video that I saw a few years ago, where he was talking about how he did his stiff legs and how he really let the bar drift out in front of him, actually out in front of his entire foot, and then pulled it back in, which is obviously not optimal if you're trying to pull for maximum loads. But as far as the stress on the back and the lats and the hamstrings, you actually feel it a little bit more when you do that. So I don't advise that you let the bar drift all the way out in front of your foot, but just a little bit forward of the midfoot is going to be appropriate for a stiff-legged deadlift. It's going to be, or at least out away from your shins. It might actually be over the midfoot. Mine's out a little bit in front, but even if it's over the midfoot, it's not going to be right up against your shins. So just because your hips are up higher, it pulls your shins back away from the bar. So 3 sets of 3 there from the 2-inch deficit. And then just because everything was low rep today, nothing but 2s and 3s on my 2 heavy compound movements, then I wanted to do something just to get a pump. and get a bunch of reps in, build some work capacity on the legs. So did the power squat machine, and I added a little twist to that today that I sometimes do, and this is just absolutely brutal on the quads. And that's, I put, you'll see on the video, I put two doubled up monster mini bands on the power squat machine. And then, so obviously the higher up you get, the closer to lockout you get, the harder the movement becomes. And then also you're fighting those bands a little bit on the way down because they're really wanting to pull you down fast. So it's just a brutal way to do that. Otherwise, I can't really put enough weight on the machine to do anything. So I have to add band tension. Makes it quite a bit harder than just doing straight weight. Did 3 sets on that machine. Did 2 sets of 15 reps with 6 plates plus the doubled up monster mini bands. And then the third set was a drop set. So hopped off, pulled a couple plates off, so took it down to 4 plates, and then finished with a set of 20. I had planned on a few other things for today, but ran out of time, ran out of energy, so that was it.